Before turning it over to our presenters, a couple of housekeeping items. As a friendly reminder, please be sure to mute your microphones when you are not speaking. For those who are joining via Zoom, you're welcome to ask questions. You can either raise the hand, and you can find the hand raised function next to the participant list or your name in the participant list, or you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. We do have folks monitoring those functions. And when it is appropriate, when we get to the question and answer, if you feel like you'd rather just ask the question out loud, you're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask those questions. For those who are joining via Facebook Live, we do have monitoring or have folks monitoring the chat comment area there as well. So please feel free to submit questions via that platform if you're able. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, and the first speaker is from the US SBA, Cindy Gardner, and Cindy is an outreach and marketing specialist with the an SBDC project officer with the US SBA, and will provide an overview of the PPP. So Cindy, I will now share your slides, and I'll turn it over to you. So
okay, thank you, Brandon.
Can everyone see?
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. You can go full screen, Brandon, I think.
Let's see.
I'll just go ahead and get started. I just wanted to say that joining later on the Q&A on the panel will be Tammy Clendenning, who is the lead economic development specialist with the state of Wisconsin, and Lisa Taylor, who is an outreach and marketing specialist for Western and Northwestern Wisconsin. We'll go over just, I have a few quick slides on the Payroll Protection Program relaunch. That was reopened the beginning of January of this year. And it originally started, well, you can move on to the next slide, please.
Are you seeing it?
Nope, we're still seeing the first slide.
My apologies.
That's okay. I'll just keep talking. The Payroll Protection Program reopened at the beginning of the year in early January. Congress intended this round of the PPP to increase access to relief funding for the hardest hit small businesses and those in underserved segments, including women, minorities, and veterans. On January 19th, the PPP opened for all participating lending institutions. Lenders remain the best source of contact for applications and processing forgiveness. The PPP is open until March 31st of this year, and all applications must be submitted to the SBA by this date or until appropriate funding is exhausted. However, we don't foresee that happening, so just keep that date in mind of March 31st. As of January 31st, there have been 891,000 PPP loans processed for a total of $73 billion. And 68% of those have been for $50,000 or less. Are you able to advance the slides, Brandon?
Yep, we can actually switch and
okay, you can go on to the next one now. And one more. Okay. Well, I'll keep talking.
Yep, we'll get it just a second. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. When you can get it, I'll just move on to the third slide there. So what is the first Draw PPP loan? It is open to all eligible applicants that did not receive a PPP loan prior to August 9th of 2020. Again, you need to apply for PPP through your lender. The PPP loan now eligibility now includes additional type of entities, which I'll go over in the next slide. Covered eligible expenses have been expanded to now include payroll costs, rent, mortgage interest, utilities, operations expenditures, certain property damage costs, supplier costs, and worker protection expenditures. That means that if you've spent money on purchasing masks or cleaning products or had to put up plexiglass shields in your place of business, you can now use those for eligible expenses. Borrowers can now select a covered period to use PPP loan proceeds anytime between 8 and 24 weeks after disbursement. Last year, you had to pick 8 or 24 weeks, and now that has been changed. You can use your loan funds anytime between 8 and 24 weeks. So for example, if you use up all of your funds in 16 weeks, then 16 weeks will be your covered period. Certain borrowers may now request an increase to their original PPP loan amount. Borrowers must have been in business by February 15th of 2020. And again, you must apply on or before March 31st, 2021, or until congressional appropriations expire. Next slide, please. Who is eligible for a first draw PPP? You must comply with size standards, and general eligibility is for entities with 500 employees or fewer. You have to meet certain criteria and certain limitations. Newly eligible entities include housing cooperatives, destination marketing organizations, certain 501c6s such as chambers of commerce, and eligible news organizations. Those that are still eligible are business entities such as partnerships, corporations, LLCs, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed individuals, 501c3, nonprofits, veterans organizations, and tribal businesses. Next slide, please. What is a second draw PPP loan? The second draw PPP loan is eligible for borrowers that previously received a PPP loan. You have to have 300 employees or less and have suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts. For most borrowers, the maximum loan amount of a second draw is 2.5 times their average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs, up to $2 million. And to figure this, you would take your annual payroll costs for either 2019 or 2020, divide that by 12, and multiply by 2.5. Second draw is also available for borrowers in the accommodation and food services sector with a NAICS code starting with 72. And their maximum loan amount for a second draw is 3.5 times the average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs, up to $2 million. Your lender will need to submit the SBA form 2483 SD when they apply for the second draw. Next slide, please. And who is eligible for the second draw PPP? Well, again, you must have previously received the first draw loan, and your covered periods cannot overlap. Additional criteria, you have used or will use the full first draw loan amount only for eligible expenses before the PPP second draw loan is dispersed. You do not have to have applied for forgiveness. You just have had to use or will use that first draw loan funds. You have to have no more than 300 employees, and you need to demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020. And these quarters need to be calendar quarters. So they must be comparable if the business was in business for all of 2019. So you cannot choose Q1 of 2019 and then Q2 of 2020. They have to be comparable. Next slide, please. This slide just goes over the loan application process. First, you need to work with your lender. And if you don't have a lender, there are over here under number 1, the SBA offers lender match, which is kind of like the match.com of finding a lender. You can go to that site and enter your information, answer some questions, and then a lender would reach out to you. And then there's some other resources available. We do suggest working with a resource partner at sba.gov/local assistance. And once you find a lender, you should complete the application. You need to include all supporting documentation. You can find all requirements at sba.gov PPP. The website has a list of everything you'll need to complete an application. And then again, use the resource partners that we do have. They're a great group of people throughout the state, one of them being the SBDCs. And then finally, once you have all of your application completed with supporting documentation, the lender will submit the application electronically to the SBA for compliance check and the loan number. The lender does review that application prior to submitting the SBA, and they do make a recommendation to the SBA. There will be a front-end compliance check to reduce the incidence of fraud. So a time lapse will occur between the time when a lender submits the application information to the SBA and when the SBA provides a loan number back to the lender. Again, the application window is open through March 31st of 2021. Next slide, please. Now we'll move on to one final slide on loan forgiveness. Once you have used all of your PPP funds, you can apply for loan forgiveness. You have to apply for forgiveness through your lender, and then the lender submits the forgiveness decision to the SBA. With the passing of the new Economic Aid Act, the EIDL advance is no longer deducted from the PPP loan forgiveness payment. Now, if you were already one of those borrowers who has applied for forgiveness and did deduct the EIDL advance, the SBA will automatically repay the lender for that EIDL advance plus any interest. And the lender will notify you, the borrower, that has been repaid. Now, the EIDL advance was available last year, and borrowers were eligible to receive $1,000 per employee up to a maximum of $10,000. So if you were one of those borrowers that did receive the EIDL advance, again, that is no longer deducted from the loan forgiveness payment. Forgiven PPP loans are not federally taxable income, and expenses paid with the PPP loan funds are federally tax deductible. Now, in the state of Wisconsin, currently that is not the case. However, there is legislation that has been presented to make that tax deductible, but we recommend that you contact your accountant, or you can go to irs.gov to look for all of the rules and regulations on that. Expanded forgivable expenses are permissible for any unforgiven PPP loan. But remember that 60-40 ratio still applies. So 60% of the PPP loan funds will need to be used for payroll expenses to be considered for 100% forgiveness. And the SBA does have a new simplified forgiveness application, the 3508S, for PPP loans that are $150,000 and under. And the 10-month deferral period still applies. So that means that you have 10 months after the last day of your covered period to apply for loan forgiveness. If you do not apply within that 10-month period, principal and interest payments will be due starting on 10-month and 1 day. So if your loan is not completely forgiven, the PPP loans have a fixed interest rate of 1%, and payment terms are 2 or 5 years. If the loan was taken before June 5th of 2020, at that time it was 2 years. However, the borrower can ask their lender to extend that loan term to 5 years. And the lender will notify the borrower of any forgiveness amount. And if there is a balance due, the lender will instruct the borrower on payments. And that is it for my presentation.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm Melinda Osterberg. I'm a community development educator with Lincoln and Marathon counties. And we were going to hear from some panelists who had gone through the Paycheck Protection Program and had experience with that, and they were going to share their experiences, because sometimes I know I find it much more helpful to hear from someone who's gone through it and maybe can have some insight there. So Mia, would you like to introduce our panelists?
Absolutely. Thank you, Melinda. My name is Mia Jung. I'm the community development educator for Outagamie and Winnebago counties, and I work a lot with economic development, specifically working with entrepreneurs of color in this region. And it's my great honor to introduce to you our two business panelists today, who both acquired the PPP loan, as Melinda mentioned, during the first round of last year. Both of these business owners have something in common. They wear many hats in their communities, and they are involved in the Color Bold Business Association, an association that is designed to improve the viability of businesses owned by entrepreneurs of color in Northeast Wisconsin. First off will be Kenyatta Ratliff, who is the owner of Universal Designs Education located in Green Bay. Kenyatta Ratliff is an entrepreneur, business strategist, master hairstylist, community leader, and ministry leader. Next up will be Yi Lee, who is the owner of Bowl 91, located in Appleton. Yi is an entrepreneur, community leader, and also serves as the adult services and engagement librarian at the Appleton Public Library, and coordinates activities for the Small Business Big Impact Grant that Appleton Public Library was awarded last year, and has been a vital partner of Color Bold Business Association in that role as well. So first off, Kenyatta, do you want to go and share a little bit about your experience?
Sure. Thanks for having me. The PPP came right on time because, like anyone else, I had no idea the pandemic was coming. But so even though it came with a lot of confusion, the PPP, my first immediate step is to contact my banker, because I felt like they would have the most up-to-date information on what's going on. So when the first round of PPP came out, I contacted my banker. My bank had already had like a small business grant already established for the smaller businesses. So I had already taken part in that grant with them. But for the PPP, he just basically gave me more information as to how to go about it. And so because I had already used Square for my business, I used my Square account to get access to the PPP. And so because for me, I thought it was easier because Square had already had all of my information for 2019 and on. So with them, it was an easy process of putting in what they asked for. The only downside of that was the amount that I was given was less than the ratio that they had set out, was like the 2 times I forgot the exact thing, but Square gave people smaller loan amounts. But at any rate, that was easy process. And so it was very helpful because even though we were out of work for some months, my salon, my place that I rent is a small, my person who I pay my check to, she is a small business owner. And so it was hard for her, as well as the person who she pays her rent to is also, also the same type of a business. So it was good that my landlord, she took our deposits that for like a free month. So that was a good asset for us. And then also when the PPP came around, we was able to pay back the rent on what was skipped. So that was, the PPP definitely came in right on time, basically. And so when we were able to go back to work, it was difficult also because even though we were able to work, a lot of our clients called in because they were sick or they came in contact with whatever. So the cash flow wasn't quite coming in as it would, pre-COVID. So the second round came around time again because it kind of gave us space to breathe as a business owner because the funds was there. And the first round, when it came to be forgiven, Square kind of had their system already made up. So I just had to answer like 2 or 3 questions, and then it just kind of just like disappeared, which was easy enough for that. So the second round, when it came out, I contacted a banker again, and I took the second round through the bank because our last time I didn't get all of the amount then. So I went again through my bank, and so this process was a lot longer, meaning the paper application was a lot thicker than Square, but a banker was there to help me answer the questions and do things that way. So it was easy because he was there to help. So I just kind of look forward to how the end result, when it comes down to it being forgiven, what that looks like because of the first stack of paperwork I had to do for the first application versus how it went with Square was different. So in regards to figuring out the 60 to 40% ratio for my payroll, so I am a one person business, and so I just subtracted the 60% for the payroll as the payroll, and used the rest for what we could for rent and bills and things like that. So basically from my time with the first round and the second round so far, I recommend any business owner that is interested in doing it, because it's a lot of fluff out there, people saying this and saying that. Go to people who know the ins and outs of it. And if you have any questions, they are there to help you with it. So to make the process smoother. So that's pretty much my experience with PPP.
Miata, could you answer this a question for you in the chat box? And I just want to say to Anne Marie, we will definitely get to the ratio question a little bit later. With somebody from the SBD could probably answer that a little bit later. But this one is directly to Kimyata, asking, is there any way you could have known Square would have offered less money than another lender? Or do you just have to find out randomly? Thank you. That was from Koss.
So I think because everyone, even Square and PayPal, this was new. And so there was no way of us knowing, because from my standpoint, I figured I would get what was stated in the ratio because that's what they said. But when it came down to it, a lot of people who use Square, they have like a chat board and people were asking questions. So I'm not really sure how it came down to that. And I don't even know if they really know. But at any rate, for me, the amount that I did receive, I was really grateful for what I received, and especially when it was all wiped away, the dollars that I did not get didn't really matter then at that point. But there was no way of me knowing, because everything that the SBA put out there, they had put out there to Foursquare.
Thank you, Kimyada. And we'll get to more question and answers a little bit later. I want to hand the mic over to Yi. If you're ready, Yi.
Hi, yep, I'm ready. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be a part of this. I wanted to give a little bit about my experience with the PPP1 and the PPP2. I have 3 businesses, so I was able to apply for the PPP for 2 of the businesses that were already operating before March 15th of 2020. So my 3rd business was created after that date, so I didn't qualify for it, but the 2 other business did receive PPP1. Kind of like for our experience for one of our restaurant, we used a 3rd-party payroll. So at that time, we didn't actually go to our local bank because we were just reacting really quickly so that we would be able to receive the funds before it ran out. So we used Gusto, which was a 3rd-party payroll, and they had a list of lenders that they were already working with because they did a lot of our payroll. So kind of like Kimyada, they kind of have our information already and what was needed. So the process was actually very smooth and efficient. So we were able to get funded really quickly. The turnaround time was only a week, and then we saw money came through our bank for one of the restaurants. And so for that lender, they gave us a portal that we could be able to look exactly where we were in the process. So after we worked with them, we knew exactly when the funds were going to come to our bank and if we got approved or not. And then for another restaurant that we did at that time, we decided to work with WIBIC, Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation. For them, it was also a very smooth process as well. We filled out everything that they asked, and majority of the forms were, they asked for like the articles of organization, your tax return, business license, your payroll documentations, Form 941 quarterly reports. And then those were like the same forms that they asked for the PPP. But again, each lender is a little bit different and they have different requirements that they will tell you when you apply for it. So we received that and it actually really helped us during the time when it was needed the most because we actually laid off employees at our restaurant because there wasn't enough sales coming through. So we couldn't retain everybody. And the most important thing was our kitchen was small, front was small. So there was limited space to be able to have all the employees in at one time all the time because of social distancing too. So we had to take precautions in a lot of ways. So we had to limit the amount of staff that could be in the business, including our customers. So we had to, so we had to lay off people. But when we received the PPP, we were able to rehire them and also hire new individuals that were looking for jobs. So that really helped us a lot. And not only be able to rehire, but we were able to retain our employees, especially our high salary, assistant managers and managers and cooks that are needed in order for us to operate the business. So we were able to do that. Unfortunately, they said the PPP was given for 8 to 24 weeks, I believe, or 6 to 8 weeks. I can't remember the date for the first round, but honestly, we used the PPP within the month because it only covered enough for 1 month of payroll, rent, and utilities. It wasn't enough to be able to cover for 2 to 3 months. We used it really quickly because we do, have a lot of employees that we hire at the restaurant for both restaurants. So the funds were not enough. Let's see, what else did I put on here? But it did help us because 60% went to our payroll, and then the other ones were just for any other expenses. We also provide benefits to our employees, so we were able to include those as well. So that really helped us a lot. Okay, so now talking about PPP2, the process, I think it's a little bit more confusing than the PPP1 because with PPP2, we actually are going through different lenders now, and we're working with local lenders. And I actually, we decided to work with local lender because we applied through the first lender that we worked with for Gusto, and they actually denied our application. It didn't even get to SBA approval yet because they had a criteria where they were only funding businesses that were 30,000 and under for the funds. So we were over what their fund limit was. So they automatically deny our application within 2 days. And after that, we were able to find a local banker that we're currently working with, and they've been really amazing. I think if I wasn't really scared in the first round, I think I would have been with a local lender versus going with a third party. I just feel more like connected with them. So we're going through Community First Credit Union in Appleton. They're located throughout the 5 cities, and they also have a portal where you can directly go in online, apply with all the documentations that I stated in the beginning. Those are exactly the documentations that they need. And if you're missing something, they either call you. In the past, nobody called us. They just let us inform us that, did you get it or you didn't get it when your fund's coming? But this time they actually take the initiative to call us and help us so that if there are any barriers or questions we have, they're able to answer that for us. So we apply within a week. We heard from them and they said they're going to be submitting our application to SBA. In the past, with the first round, the lenders actually had the choice to just automatically give us the funds, but they told us that this time it's a little bit different. The SBA has to approve before the lender can be able to fund. So, and then once SBA approved, the lenders have 10 days to fund the business. So right now we're approved, but we're just waiting for those funds. So we haven't received the funds yet. We're kind of waiting through Community First. For our other restaurant, we went through WIBIC again, but with WIBIC, you have to talk to the lender because everybody does it differently. With WIBIC, you have to already been forgiven for your first round of PPP. Otherwise, you can't apply for the second round. And you have to have worked with them for the first round. Otherwise, you can't work with them the second round. So for them, it's actually taking a little bit longer. We don't know. We haven't heard anything back from SBA yet. And we don't know if we're approved or not approved. So we're kind of still waiting. But yeah, I can't wait until we receive these funds because we're still in a pandemic crisis. And but we still need our employees every day in order to operate our business. But what I'm super happy about this time is that we're getting 3.5 times more than the last time. And that's going to actually be able to, according to what the funds right now is approved, it will be, it will last us 3 months instead of 1 month. So that's the difference. And yeah, so I think that's all I have. But other than that, I thought the process was really smooth. There wasn't much barriers for me because I can read and write in English. It's not a it's not a language that I don't understand, but many business owners that I know that do not speak English, they can't even apply for these funds because there's a lot of documents that they need to keep track of, and some of them don't have an accountant or they don't have somebody that they're working with who will be able to help them apply for these funds. So it's very unfortunate that some of these businesses are not receiving the funds, but um, I'm just happy that I'm able to be able to apply and get those fundings. So that's it, Mia, from me.
Thank you, Yi. That was awesome. And you'll probably get a couple more questions later.
Mhm.
But I think, Melinda, you're going to
Yeah.
introduce Jack now.
Yes, I think actually you did a good job of providing a nice segue. So I am introducing Jack Mukunda. He is with Park City Credit Union. So one of those small local banks, as you mentioned. They are in kind of, I guess we consider it the Northwoods. So I work with them know of them from my work in Lincoln County, where they have a branch in Merrill. Jack is the Chief Operating Officer there. And so now that we've heard from some of the small businesses, I was hopeful that as a lender, you could please describe your experience with administering the PPP funds, both through the application process and now as we are going through that forgiveness process as well.
Yeah, I sure can. And thanks for having me as a panelist today. As it was referred to, I head up the lending department here at Park City, and we are a small to medium-sized credit union. We do service everybody in the Northwoods, and there's a lot of small businesses in our area. Our story is very similar to a lot of the small to medium institutions that administered this program. We were just as surprised to hear about the PPP program as everybody and business owners. We weren't prepared for it. Nobody really was. On top of it, we weren't even an SBA authorized lender, which you have to be to do the program. But we saw the value in it. We decided that we wanted to jump in and help out the businesses in our area. So we contacted SBA and worked with our reps. They were very helpful in getting us set up to become authorized. What our first challenge that we saw was just the ability to communicate with SBA and their portals to be able to submit information and the documentation that they needed. Once we had that, we also contacted with various vendors to help with the application process to flow. And so we did that in a pretty short period of time. And of course, when you do things quickly, it doesn't always work out the best, but we knew that this was going to be a work in progress as we went through the whole thing, and actually it continues to be. So now that we had access to the SBA and the program, the next thing we needed to do was mass communicate the program and get our business owners involved to take advantage of it. So I worked with our marketing department and we set up a dedicated web page, which most institutions did the same thing. And when they accessed that, they had links to the SBA website, overview of the program. We also had the application there, plus instructions. And what we did with our instructions is we divided them up among what type of business entity are you. So if you're an LLC, obviously you've got to supply different documents than you would if you were a sole proprietor. So you would look to see what type of business you were, click on that, and then it would kind of walk you through some of the documentation that we would be looking for. And they could also submit those documents through the portal that we had built into the website. One of the important things I think that helped us along is we encouraged every business owner to make sure they involved their tax preparer or CPA, because that way they could also help them with the documentation. They became pretty aware quickly as to what was needed for their customers to apply for these loans. So they're very helpful. And I think that made the process flow a little bit better because they actually had the documents when they submitted the applications. As some of the other business owner panelists alluded to, There was bad communication and there was good communication. We wanted to make sure that we could communicate with our business owners, but we also realized that with a small institution like us, limited staff, that we couldn't do it the way we typically like to, through a phone call or personal meetings. So we also set up a universal email address, and it was dedicated to the PPP program alone. So they could email through that, we would know, and we could email back. We were putting in some long hours so they could possibly get a response at 10 o'clock at night. But it was helpful and it kept that information flowing. So then we had exactly everything that we needed to submit and get these loans approved. We let our business owners know that we were learning this whole process along with them, and that was very helpful. They appreciated the fact that we were doing it and the fact that we were in this together. And at the end of the day, we were able to book about 100 loans for about $2 million. Our smallest loan was about $600. And the largest one was about $220,000. So you can see the average was around that $10,000 to $20,000 range, which means, you know, we truly did help small businesses. As far as errors, the application was fairly simple. But again, you know, somebody'd miss a box or we needed some clarification on something like that. So again, we were able to communicate through that email address and tell them, you know, we need to verify this, validate that, you're missing a document and such. The majority of people were pretty savvy to where they could send us the documents that we needed through a PDF or something like that. But then we still had some that were technically challenged, like I am. And we would still accept paper copies from them through our drive-through or whatever, so they could drop that off. I will say that we worked with our Wisconsin lending rep at SBA, Christina Diedrich. I think she's my newest and most used pen pal. I've got thousands and thousands of emails back and forth with her, and she really did help us through the whole program. So I've got a confession now as far as forgiveness. Like a lot of institutions, we kind of held back on instituting the forgiveness portion of this because we were all hoping that there would be an amendment to the CARES Act that would allow blanket forgiveness. And we didn't want to put our members through all the process of doing this and then have them blanket forgive the majority of our loans anyway. Well, we give up hope in that. I'm not saying that it possibly can't happen in the future, but we're getting into a time crunch now. So we just started the forgiveness process. We're doing it in a similar fashion. We've got a area in the web that they can go to and see the information and so on. We've realized that forgiveness is going to be a little bit more involved than getting the money in their pockets. The institutions are charged with doing a little bit more validation, collecting some paperwork and such. Sometimes there can be audits, but we're dedicated again in working with every one of those 100 members that we have currently. Plus, I think since round two, we already have around 25 applicants for the second round. We'll be working with them as well. So it's our intention to just continue to be the conduit between our business owners and the SBA until each and every loan is taken care of. But again, it warms our heart to hear from panelists like the business owners that we have and the business owners that we've helped, how important this was to them. And you could really feel the gratitude when they'd come in and get the money, you know, sometimes in tears, because it allowed them to keep their businesses open. And that's what it's all about. And that's what makes us happy to be able to be a lender to administer this. It was worth all the headache to get everything set up and the programs and the rush. One of my best analogies that I've heard about this is it's like building an airplane in flight. We did that. And we got the money in people's pockets and the plane is flying pretty good right now. I'm not sure if we're ready to land yet, but we'll get there with the help of the SBA and our business owners.
Thank you, Jack. This might be a question for either you or for Tammy Clendenning with the SBA who's on the call. But we do have a participant who received their first PPP loan on February 5th. And they've used the funds. They sound a little bit like Yi or Kimada. who use the funds very quickly, and they would like to apply for the second round of funding. Is there a waiting period between the first and the second round of funding?
So that's a really good question. There isn't a waiting period per se. However, the covered periods for a PPP 1 and a PPP 2 cannot overlap. So if they just received their funding on February 5th, there probably won't be time to apply for a second round PPP unless the date is extended, just simply because the covered period is a minimum of 8 weeks. And that'll, if we go 2 months out from February 5th, you're really talking April 5th. So again, unless that application window is extended out, I'm probably going to say there isn't going to be sufficient time for that.
Thanks, Tammy. So there is another question about what was kind of the gotcha, or what was a common roadblock that I'll start with you, Jack, that you saw among applicants. Was there one piece of documentation that was frequently missing? And then Yi or Himada, if you would like to elaborate on something from your experience, was there something that you've both applied a couple of times that was maybe more of a stumbling block than the other parts of the application?
Yeah, I think when the program first came out, I believe business owners were under the impression that they just fill out a simple 1-page or 2-page application, sign it, that validates that the information they're giving is correct, sending it in, and that would be it. But then in order to validate the qualifications as 2.5 times the amount and such, we had to go back and ask them for their tax returns, their 941s. Even at the very beginning, I would say for about 30 days or a little bit more, institutions did not have clear guidance as far as how do we handle self-employed people, Schedule Cs. That guidance came out, as we moved along. So we had a lot of people with Schedule C income, sole proprietors, that weren't quite sure if they qualified, what they qualified for, and so on. But as that became clarified, then we got back to them and said, okay, now let's move forward and get this information. But I think it was really just a little bit of confusion exactly what they needed to provide along with the application to get qualified for the loan.
Yeah, with,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, for my experience, the documentation is really important because you don't want to have a delay at all. But then when I applied for the PPP2, our local bank actually, when they looked up on the DFI, the Department of Financial Institution, they saw that our business was, we had to renew our articles of organization because it was not in good standing. So they could not submit our application to SBA. So they were waiting on that. And at that time, DFI said that they were still only working on renewing the January people who renew their applications for their articles. And they said that it's going to be another month until they can be able to get to my application for that. And I said, well, I need to expedite this because I need them to submit it to SBA so that I can be able to get my PPP. So I was able to work with DFI and they were able to expedite so that it could get my articles of corporation back into good standing so that they can be able to submit it to SBA. So that was something that got me super nervous because I think for PPP1, they actually didn't look at our articles of corporation. So every lender is very different. So really talk to your lender, know exactly what is needed. And yeah, so. And also work with your accountant, exactly like what Jack said. That's very important because your accountant is the one who does all your bookkeeping, know exactly what your tax return is like, especially for the PPP2, where there's a 25% in reduction for quarter. So you need to know exactly which quarter is the one that you will send in to the lender. And for our lender, the proof for them is they needed a quarterly P&L. And I know each individual lenders does it differently too, but then they said they wanted the P&L from 2019 and 2020. So that's what we had to do.
So the more I sit and listen to Yi and Jack about other businesses' experiences, I feel like my process has been simple on the end of applying and through Square, and then also the second time through a Nicolay Bank through my second PPP. And I maybe because Square and my bank already had my information, that it was so easy. When I had talked the first time about the stack of paper, it was really reading all the small fine print that took the longest for me, and I just had to like sign here, and then turn it in to my banker. So I feel like the relationship that you have with your bankers is very important. But as far as a barrier, or they said a gotcha, or to warn a business person applying for the first time, I feel like the barrier that people have to probably get over is the fear. Because for me, I didn't want to have to pay it back. So because I heard, oh, if you do this, then it will all, be gone. So I guess I would say trust the process. And if you calculate the percentage to payroll and you keep your receipts and stuff for spending, I feel like you should be fine, unless you are just not a good person that is able to keep track of your funds. Then I would say don't do it. But if you can handle your business and do it how they are saying it, I feel like taking the fear out of the equation and just doing it, then the outcome would be good.
Thank you, Kimada. Yes, I completely agree that you and you both were very brave in being kind of trailblazers and taking advantage of this program, and I appreciate that. We are about getting very close to the end, and Brandon, did you have any final comments that you would like? If not, if you are interested in staying on for a couple minutes, I believe that we can have some people from the SBA stay on and answer some of those very direct questions that may be very specific to you as an individual. Also, if there is interest, and Brandon, you can help me out with this, how do we want to do any sort of follow-up if you are interested as a small business owner in applying for this program, how we can help you and assist you through that process?
Yes, can you hear me again, Mike?
Yes.
Am I cutting up? Oh, great. So I do want to just do a quick introduction of Colleen Merrill, who is the Associate State Director with the Wisconsin SBDC and a co-sponsor of the event. Just to kind of talk about some of these things, we will be sending out an evaluation, and we will be posting the recording and any supporting documentation, and we will also collect questions, and we'll either direct folks to the appropriate people, or we'll actually put a response to those questions. So everything will be online. But Colleen, if you're on, I'll turn it over to you just to introduce yourself and the SBDC.
Sure, I'll just take a quick moment. Thank you. This was a really, really informative presentation. So as Brandon mentioned, I am the Associate State Director for the Small Business Development Center. You can Google SBDC anytime to find our resources. Know that we are in every county. Everything we do is at no cost. We are funded partially through the SBA and partially through the UW system. Everything we do is no cost and confidential, and it is one-on-one consulting with a plethora of other resources that are at your disposal. Because of the CARES funding, we've been able to actually pull together some additional resources for businesses. We work with any company under 500 employees. We have specifically an e-commerce academy for those that are trying to transition to the online platform and marketplace that you can go through at no cost. We have just started a marketing clinic where we are partnering with the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and clients are able to go through this clinic and have students complete websites, marketing strategies, all sorts of different things, again, at no cost. We have an export-specific consultant if you're looking to expand markets and get into the international marketplace. We have a food and an agricultural specialist that helps bring food products to market or deal with the agricultural needs that you might have. So a lot of our consultants are generalists, and they basically take you through an assessment and look at what your next steps are based on your goals. We do a lot of forecasting, putting together financial packages, and connecting you to resources. So if at any point you need some consulting and some support in your corner, you can find our centers just by Googling SBDC in Wisconsin, and you will be led to the appropriate center that's closest to you. So yeah, thank you for all of the businesses out there doing what you're doing. I know it hasn't been easy, but the good news is there's so many different organizations that are here to help you and support you.
Wonderful. And thank you, Colleen. Again, we will post those that information that was just described on our website as well. So you can find it in an easy format. So with that, that would end the formal part of this presentation. If there are some folks who are still interested and have some questions, a few of us will stick around to answer any of those lingering questions. But with that, thank you all for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.